They called him Himmel the Liar, a warrior of the sea, a teller of tales no one believed. They would gather in the lamplight, safe from the spray of the tide, and laugh at his stories of great beasts that slept beneath the waves, of ancient curses laid upon forgotten kings, of entire cities built from coral and the slow, grinding passage of time. They called him a madman, a spinner of yarns, a fool lost in his own fantasies. But every lie he told, every single one, was true. He had seen the world beneath the world, the truth hidden in the crushing dark of the abyss. He was a cartographer of myths, a historian of the impossible. While they lived in their small, safe world, he navigated the terrifying reality that bordered it, a reality they dismissed with a drunken chuckle and a wave of the hand. The tavern was a haven from the biting sea wind, thick with the smell of spilled ale and wet wool. Sailors, flush with their recent hauls, roared with laughter, their faces ruddy in the firelight. And in the darkest corner, away from the warmth and the noise, sat Himmel, soaked to the bone, silent, a ghost at their feast. His eyes, when you dared to look, held the vast emptiness of the deep ocean, haunted by things that had no name and no language. Beside him, leaning against the damp stone wall, was his harpoon, a simple tool of wood and iron that seemed to share his silence. "Tell us again, Himmel," a burly sailor bellowed, his voice slurring. He slammed his tankard on the table, spilling foam. "About the moon whale, the one that sings to the sky." The table erupted in guffaws. Himmel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words cut through the noise like a ship's prow through a silent fog. "It rose when the stars went silent," he said, his gaze fixed on something far beyond the tavern walls. "I spoke its name. It answered with a storm. I danced with sea nymphs last night." Another sailor mocked, winking at the barmaid. The laughter grew louder, more derisive. They drank, they mocked, they reveled in their comfortable ignorance. But Himmel never argued, never raised his voice in protest. He had learned a long time ago that truth is not for the drunk or for the safe. It is a currency for the desperate, for the drowning. He remembered drowning. The memory was as cold and sharp as the sea itself. The storm had been a living thing, a beast of wind and water that tore his ship to splinters. He remembered the world turning upside down, the sky becoming the sea becoming a black, suffocating sky. As he sank into the abyss, his lungs burning, the pressure threatening to crush him, he saw it. Not darkness, but a presence. A web of ghostly lights, a consciousness as vast and ancient as the ocean itself. The sea spoke, not in words, but in a wave of understanding that washed over his dying mind. Its voice was a feminine whisper, the sound of tides turning on a million forgotten shores. "Do you wish to live, warrior?" it asked, gasping for breath he no longer had. He screamed a silent yes. "Then speak the truth," the sea commanded. "Speak of me. Speak of my children, my secrets, my rage. Speak it forever. Let them mock you. Let them forget you. That is your price for life, your breath in exchange for their disbelief." And in that moment, he began to rise. A soft light enveloped him, pushing back the crushing dark. In his hand, a harpoon of pure light formed, a gift and a shackle. He had been reborn. Truth was his gift, and it was his prison. He was bound to bear witness, a prophet no one would ever believe. He stood near the docks, the smell of salt and drying nets heavy in the air. Children, blissfully unaware, chased each other between coils of rope. He approached a group of villagers mending their nets, their faces weathered by sun and sea. "The sea is shifting," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "The Leviathan stirs from its slumber. You must leave this place. You must leave before moonrise." One of them looked up, his expression a mixture of pity and annoyance. "Go home, Himmel. Sleep it off. No one's buying your madness today." The others grunted in agreement, turning back to their work, dismissing him as they always did. He knew they wouldn't listen. They never did. Their world was built on solid ground, on routines and predictable tides. His was a world of omens and ancient awakenings, but he spoke because he must. That was the pact. That was the price. He spoke the truth, planted the seed of warning, and then walked away, leaving them to their fate. The change began subtly. A strange stillness fell over the village. The moon, as it climbed the sky, seemed to darken, as if a shadow had fallen across its face. Then the tide began to pull back and back and back, exposing yards of wet sand and stranded fish. The sea receded with an unnatural, hungry sound. The villagers finally stopped their work, their laughter dying in their throats as they stared at the impossible sight. Then the water exploded. With a roar that shook the very cliffs, a column of ocean erupted toward the sky. From it, a head the size of a house emerged, followed by a body of immense, terrifying scale. A leviathan. Panic, raw and primal, ripped through the village. Screams echoed as people ran, scrambling over each other. Buildings near the shore splintered and collapsed as the beast's immense form crashed against the coast. Amidst the chaos, one figure moved against the tide of fleeing bodies. Himmel. He ran toward the monster, his old harpoon now held tight in his grip. He reached the water's edge and roared, his voice carrying over the destruction. Back, you face me now. He didn't wait for an answer. He leaped into the churning surf, and as his feet left the land, the simple harpoon in his hand began to glow with the same ethereal light as the one in his memory. It was a beacon of truth in the face of chaos. With a warrior's cry, he hurled himself at the creature, a tiny man against a living mountain. He struck true. The glowing harpoon buried itself deep in the monster's flesh. The beast let out one final, deafening roar of agony before its colossal body crashed down, lifeless, sending a final devastating wave across the ruined shore. The morning light revealed a scene of devastation. Himmel lay on the shore, wounded and exhausted, the tide lapping gently at his feet. The villagers emerged from their hiding places, their faces masks of shock and awe. They gathered around him, their mockery replaced by a stunned silence. Some knelt, their earlier disbelief now a burning shame. Others whispered his name, no longer as liar, but as savior. In the weeks that followed, they began to carve his likeness into stone, a monument to the man they had scorned. Children who once ran from him now sat by the fire and retold his tales, not as jokes, but as sacred history. His story became a legend, a song sung to new generations. He had warned them, he had fought for them, he had bled for them, but their belief, their reverence came too late. They built him statues, they wrote him songs, but Himmel? Himmel was gone. He had returned to the sea, his duty fulfilled, his burden still his own. He walked away from the village, back to the source of his truth, because the world does not fear lies. It can dismiss them, laugh at them. What it truly fears is the man who speaks the truth and asks for nothing, not even belief, in return. His figure grew smaller, walking calmly across the surface of the ocean, until he disappeared completely into the morning mist.